German voters are deciding who will run their next government, following the collapse of the three-way coalition under Chancellor Olaf Scholz of the center-left Social Democrats. The opposition Conservatives, an alliance of the Christian Democrats and the Christian Social Union, have been leading nationwide polls for more than 2 years. They are trailed by the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD party. But what are the issues fueling this snap election? Germany has long been Europe's biggest economy, but for the past 2 years, it's been in decline. Rising energy prices played a big role in that, and they remain a formidable challenge for both households and businesses. Friedrich Merz, the CDU opposition leader, had strong words for Olaf Scholz, arguing he led Germany into economic crisis while Chancellor.
Ich Ihnen sagen, Herr Bundeskanzler, bin ich einigermaßen erstaunt, welche Wahrnehmung Sie haben. Wir sind jetzt im 3. Jahr einer Rezession. Das hat es in Deutschland noch nie gegeben. Das zu stoppen wird eine Riesenkraftanstrengung. Also ich muss Ihnen einfach sagen, ich bin einigermaßen erschüttert, mit welcher Wahrnehmung Sie hier heute Abend den Zustand unserer Wirtschaft.
A slew of violent attacks linked to foreign suspects have raised concerns about both security and migration, prompting political parties to demand stricter measures on migration. Germany's net population rose by over 3.5 million between 2014 and 2024, driven entirely by migration. Since 2022, Germany has taken in over 2 million refugees. The AfD party, Alice Weidel in particular, has called for borders to be closed and asylum seekers to no longer have the right to family reunification.
Für was ich stehe, ist, diese illegale Migration zu stoppen und dass wir uns von den Menschen trennen, die illegal sich in unserem Land aufhalten und die straffällig geworden sind.
The conservative Christian Democrats have also adopted a stricter stance on immigration, including pushing back asylum seekers at the borders. Some voters believe that the parties themselves have made this a red-button issue.
One of the things that moves people in Germany most might be the topic of migration, because not necessarily on their own accounts, but because it's a topic that has been raised by all of the major parties and thus has set a movement into place with the people as well.
Both a stagnating economy and tensions over migration have fueled the rise of the far-right AfD party. Its biggest political win on a federal level came earlier this year, when it helped the passing of a vote sponsored by the leader of the German Conservatives. Most of Germany's major parties refuse to work with the AfD, and many protests against the AfD party have broken out across Germany, with voters like Antje Marta worried about a possible shift to the right.
Ich empfinde es als absolut besorgniserregend, dass Rassismus und die rechte Kommunikation zur Normalität wird. Jeder Mensch zählt und kein Mensch ist illegal. Und deswegen bin ich hier und so oft es möglich ist, auf die Straße gehen sollten. Ich habe eine Stimme, wir alle haben eine Stimme.
Germany's mainstream parties all favor helping Ukraine fend off Russia's invasion with weapons and supplies. However, Scholz and his Social Democrats have recently struck a more cautious tone, emphasizing the need for diplomacy. The AfD is among those who want an end to weapons deliveries to Kyiv and a resumption of good relations with Moscow.
U.S. President Donald Trump escalated his war of words with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy on Wednesday, calling him a dictator without elections in a Truth Social post, adding that he better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. Trump's post came just hours after Zelensky said the U.S. president was trapped in a Russian disinformation bubble, after Trump suggested on Tuesday that Ukraine was responsible for Russia's full-scale invasion.
You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
Speaking at a news briefing, Zelensky said he would like Trump's team to have more truth about his country.
Unfortunately, President Trump, who we respect a lot as the leader of a nation that we really respect, the American nation, who supported us all the time, unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
Zelensky also said Trump's assertion that his approval rating was just 4% was Russian disinformation, and that any attempt to replace him would fail. An early February poll from the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology shows 57% of Ukrainians trust their president. Trump's comments criticizing Zelensky come as the war between Ukraine and Russia nears its 3-year mark, following Russia's invasion on February 24, 2022. Russia has seized some 20% of Ukraine and is slowly but steadily gaining more territory in the east. Zelenskyy's 5-year term was supposed to end in 2024, but presidential and parliamentary elections cannot be held under martial law, which Ukraine imposed in February 2022 in response to Russia's invasion. The war of words between Trump and Zelensky comes after a phone call between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin last week, which upended U.S. policy to isolate Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. It also follows talks between senior U.S. and Russian officials on ending the war that did not include Ukraine or Europe. On Wednesday, Putin praised the outcome of those talks in Saudi Arabia, saying, quote, "I rate them highly," and added that Ukraine would not be excluded from negotiations to end the war. Meanwhile, Trump's envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, met with Zelensky in Kyiv on Wednesday. He told reporters he was there to listen and said he understood Ukraine's need for security guarantees.
U.S. President Donald Trump has told the Justice Department to get rid of all remaining Biden-era U.S. attorneys. The White House has already sent termination notices to several of them, while others have quit. Dozens of career DOJ officials who normally remain in office from one administration to the next have also been fired or quit since Trump took office. And the DOJ said on Wednesday Trump intends to nominate advisors from his first term, people who have been loyal to him, to top Justice Department posts. The president has vowed to shake up the Justice Department, which he says was used against him during his years out of power. He has claimed without evidence that the department had been politicized like never before. In a Truth Social post on Tuesday, Trump said, quote, "We must clean house immediately and restore confidence. America's golden age must have a fair justice system. That begins today." The DOJ did not immediately respond to a request.
Donald Trump says an announcement on tariffs will come over the next month or sooner. Speaking at a conference in Miami, the US president appeared to add lumber to the list of likely targets, and he again claimed that the threat of tariffs was producing results.
A lot of car companies are calling. They called me, three of the majors, they called and they said, we're looking all over the place. We want to be there. I'm going to be announcing tariffs on cars and semiconductors and chips and pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals, and lumber probably, and some other things over the next month or sooner.
Since returning to office, Trump has imposed a range of new tariffs. That includes broad ones, like an extra 10% levy on goods from China, to ones targeted at specific products like steel. Though Trump says they will create jobs and raise revenue, many economists warn the moves could spur inflation. Minutes of the last Federal Reserve policy meeting, released Wednesday, show policymakers there are concerned that tariffs could drive prices higher. That might halt interest rate reductions for now. And there are signs that some voters share those concerns. A Reuters Ipsos poll found 53% of Americans now think the economy is on the wrong track, up 10 percentage points on last month. Only 32% approved of Trump's performance on inflation, and his overall approval rating fell. Reuters also spoke to voters in Miami and here in Phoenix, Arizona. At least some connect trade policy to rising prices.
Trump imposed those tariffs. He said it was going to be a little pain, and you notice some of the prices going up, food prices going up. He did make those promises that food prices would go down before he entered office.
Yeah, I mean, I think he promised a lot, and then when he got into office, he took away diversity, groceries went up.
There's no sign of Trump backing down, however. Earlier this week, he said an announcement on tariffs was likely to come on April 2nd. And his latest comments suggest that moment may now have moved closer.
On the Gaza City coastline, Palestinian fishermen gather in the hope of catching enough fish to feed their families. But 15 months of war between Israel and Hamas has left the city's fishing industry in ruin. The once thriving coastline is now a scene of devastation. Most fishermen have lost their boats and with them their livelihoods. Standing by the shore, fisherman Jamal Al-Amoudi points to a piece of metal floating in the water.
All the money is gone. It is all gone. This is my boat by the fishing net, in the water, and the only thing visible is the metal piece. I have a boat that is big, 17 meters, and I have 10 smaller boats. There are no small boats left. It is all gone. It is all destroyed. Not just me, but all the people. Look at the port, which is not visible due to the number of smaller boats and bigger boats. Look, there is nothing there except for the metal sticking out of the water.
Before the war, fishing was a vital part of daily life in Gaza. Fishermen would set out to sea, returning with fresh catches to sell at the local market. The industry provided a source of income for many families and was an important part of the community. But during the war, Israeli restrictions in the waters of the enclave prevented fishermen from going out to sea, crippling the industry. Now they're struggling to rebuild. With no materials available to build new boats, they're forced to try and repair old boats or use alternative methods like fish traps. Awad al-Mekdad is another fisherman.
We are building a boat from scratch, a rowboat. We are patching it up. Look at these parts here. These parts are taken from the large boats. We built it all from the beginning. And that thing is highly expensive. There is no raw material, no fiberglass, and these materials are not available today.
Israel launched its offensive on Gaza after Hamas militants stormed southern Israel on October 7th, 2023. The group killed 1,200 people and took over 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. In Gaza, more than 48,000 people have been killed, according to Palestinian health officials. Much of the enclave has been devastated. A ceasefire agreement was reached last month, bringing an end to the fighting. But for fishermen, the road to recovery will be long and difficult.
Europe's biggest defence company, BAE Systems, said it could expand to meet surging demand. But that depended on governments providing long-term guarantees about higher military spending. Shares in Europe's defence companies have rallied over the last week. It followed a summit in Munich where the US told Europe's political leaders they must raise military budgets. BAE CEO Charles Woodburn said major shifts in European security could drive significantly higher defence spending. He added BAE was already having high-level conversations with governments. Analysts have said correcting 10 years of underspending by NATO members to reach the current 2% target would cost $833.6 billion. In Wednesday's full-year results, BAE showed it secured $42.5 billion of orders last year. That took its backlog to a record of nearly $98 billion, 3 times its annual sales. There was a further sign of how high defence spending is on the European agenda Wednesday. Defence group Rheinmetall said it struck a deal with Germany's armed forces worth $271 million. It's to provide logistical support during troop redeployments.
Almost 9 out of 10 Japanese companies expect U.S. President Donald Trump's policies to hurt business. That's according to the results of a new Reuters study out Thursday. It's the clearest sign yet of rising worry in the United States' top foreign direct investor. About 86% of 233 companies surveyed said Trump's policy measures would have an adverse or somewhat adverse effect on their business environment. That's up from 73% from the same survey taken a month before Trump took office. Of the firms in the world's 4th largest economy that see Trump's policy initiatives as negative, 72% picked his trade strategy, including imposing more tariffs as the most detrimental factor. Trump has already announced 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, imposed 10% duties on goods from China, and has threatened Canada and Mexico with steep measures that are on a 30-day hold. Earlier this week, Trump threatened tariffs, quote, in the neighborhood of 25% on auto imports as soon as April 2nd. While Japan does not impose tariffs on cars, the U.S. government said during Trump's first term that a variety of non-tariff barriers impeded access to Japan's automotive market. Meanwhile, about a quarter of the companies that said they see Trump as bad for business picked deepening friction between the United States and China as their main concern. Japan, a firm U.S. ally, is also deeply reliant on China as both a manufacturing base and a key market for its machinery and other exports.